Hi, I'm Brian Allen, and today we're going to have a closer look at Mount Rainier. The mountain I chose is Mount Rainier, and it is in the Cascade Mountain Range. It is located just 60 miles southeast of Seattle, Washington. It is an active volcano that has been building over the last 500,000 years. It is actually in the same location as an ancient volcano that stood 1 to 2 million years ago. The mountain has over 20 glaciers and 5 major rivers. It has the most glaciers on a mountain in the lower 48 states. It stands at 14,411 feet above sea level and has a prominence of over 13,000 feet. Mount Rainier is part of the Cascade Range, which was created by two converging tectonic plates. This has created a chain of volcanoes that are parallel with the coast. The Juan de Fuca plate is plunging underneath the North American plate, which pushes up less dense rock, water, and gases in the form of magma. The magma will gather in chambers just below the crust. When a disturbance like an earthquake happens, the magma will explode out the surface. Mount Rainier is the spot where this happens. Here is a video from Google Earth showing the mountain. We start by looking at the south aspect of the mountain, and the angle of the sun is from December 2nd. The area of Mount Rainier is full of evidence of past eruptions. The Burroughs Mountain was made 500,000 years ago from an eruption. The Rampart Ridge was formed by lava flows that were met by a glacier, and they formed a cliff. These are the two examples of many in the park. The youngest evidence of volcanic activity are the craters around the summit that happened about 1,000 years ago. There are small surface lava flows that are under two glaciers, Emma and Winthrop. The layer of rock from these events show the history of what has happened. Mount Rainier erupts less often than other volcanoes in the Cascade Range. This is because the magma is less viscous than the other volcanoes. This year, the snowpack on the mountain has gotten off to a good start, with 133% of the normal snowpack, but the outlook for this year is one of less snow. El Nino is strong this year, and that means the warm tropical air will overcome the Pacific Northwest, and with it, less snow. The Paradise area is one of the snowiest places in the U.S., with annual snowfall between 22 and 93 feet. Rain in the area is fueled by moisture from the Pacific Ocean, and some spring and early summers, flooding can be a problem for the mountain. There are three major ecosystems on the mountain. The lowest in elevation is the forest life zone. It starts at about 1,700 feet and goes up to about 6,000 feet. In there are three different sub-ecosystems: the low elevation forest, the mid-elevation forest, and the high-elevation forest. They all have different species of trees associated with each sub-zone. The sub-alpine zone is from about 5,000 to 7,000 feet and covers about 20% of the park. The alpine zone is roughly 7,000 feet and above, depending on the aspect of the slope. About 50% of the alpine zone is always covered in snow, and the other 50% is broken up into four vegetation types: fell fields, talus slopes, snow beds, and heather communities. For at least 9,000 years, people have used the mountain for resources, and in turn has a deep spiritual meaning. They scoured the subalpine area for hunting goats and gathering fruit such as huckleberries. They have used its streams for fishing and forests for wood. It's certainly not considered an untouched wilderness. There are many legends from the Native Americans about the mountain. Legends dealing with feuds of mountains throwing rocks at one another to big floods killing all the animals except for the pure ones that climbed to the mountaintops. Many of the names of the mountain features and places are named after Native American tribes and people. there were about 7 different tribes that inhabited the area. There has been some movement in changing the name of the mountain to a Native American name instead of the British Navy captain who fought against the U.S. in a Revolutionary War. The Poya tribe wants to name the mountain Mount Tacoma or Mount Tahoma. The first non-native to climb to the top happened in 1870 by the two guys named P.B. Van Trump and General Hazard Stevens, after being shown the way by the native guide Saluskin. In the 1800s, Mount Rainier was looked at for mining and logging, but turned into a forest reserve, and in 1899 turned into the 5th National Park. John Muir was in charge of the effort to make the national park. The Pacific tree frog lives in many different habitats at a variety of different elevations. They live in grasslands, forests, and in the farmlands, from the oceans to the mountains. It doesn't climb trees and is mostly terrestrial and prefers low plants and lays eggs in a bunch of different water ecosystems. They can be active all the way down to the temperature of 4 degrees Celsius, and they can survive in water temperatures below that for quite some time. They have been seen to survive temperatures below freezing, and they can still move. The Pacific tree frog can be frozen stiff for 8 hours, thawed, and survive. This is useful at elevations up to 9,800 feet, whereas summer nights can have freezing temperatures. The tadpoles can also survive up to 34 degrees Celsius too. The Mount Hood pussypaws lives in the ponderosa pines, subalpine sandy flats, and the alpine habitat. They live at elevations from 1,500 to 4,300 meters. They are small perennial plants that have waxy leaves and small white or rose-colored flowers. The leaves are more of a succulent variety. They have a thick taproot and have a woody caudex. The caudex is the underground base of the stem of the plant where new leaves and stem arise from. The higher elevation plants have a caudex of up to 5 branches, which are more than the ones at lower elevation. Their seeds are usually spread by the wind, and the plants are commonly found in recent disturbed areas. The most common disturbances in the Mount Rainier National Park are fire, wind, insects, lairs, and avalanches. Fire is an important disturbance for the area, as some plants need the fire to thrive. People visiting the area by exploring the different landscapes can have an effect on the sensitive areas. It is stressed that they stay on the trail to minimize impact, especially as you go up in elevation. In 1967, there were over 1.8 million visitors, and in 2022, there were over 2.3 million visitors. With all these visitors, it doesn't take a big percentage of those who disobey the trail and park rules to have a noticeable impact on the landscape. Mount Rainier has an ecological restoration program, and they grow native plants in greenhouses, and then they are brought out and planted. They water each plant for the rest of the year, but will not water them in the following years. They also control non-native plants from June to September. They will start at lower elevations in June and work their way up to the higher elevations, even rappelling down steep slopes. In more remote areas, they will use helicopters to remove and plant native plants. They planted over 80,000 plants in the park in 2020. Here's the citations page, and I've hoped you've learned something about Mount Rainier.